Good morning, Santa Clarita, and welcome to today's edition of the Santa Clarita Valley Sheriff's Talk Show with your host, Shirley Miller, the Public Information Officer for the Santa Clarita Valley area.
Hi, good morning. Today in our studio today, we have, our focus today is really sexual assault, being that April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And today in the studio, we have with us Sergeant Brian Hudson. He's from the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department Special Victims Bureau. And then we have Jonathan Kraut representing the Domestic Violence Center of Santa Clarita, and Jessica Romo from Strength United. So we're going to find out some really interesting things. So we're going to clear up some misconceptions about sexual assault, things that you may not know. And then let's start it out with saying good morning to our crime prevention deputies. We have with us our Canyon Country guys. We have Deputy Jonathan Wilson and Deputy Luis Cabrera. Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for coming this morning. And I know, Deputy Cabrera, you had a long day yesterday.
Yes,
It's probably
did.
a little bit hard to get up this morning.
I drank my coffee. I'm good.
Okay. So what I wanted to talk to you about is topic of 911. You probably heard last week we had a case where you want to tell me a little bit about what happened last week with our 911 lines?
Apparently, a child got a hold of a cell phone and dialed 911, and it caused a response by our local sheriff station.
And from what I understand, he called 911 repeatedly. I think it was like over the course of an hour.
Right. What a lot of people don't know is that the cell phone that the child was using was an old cell phone, but some of these cell phones that don't have a wireless connection, the 911 function still works on it.
Right, and I didn't really think about that either until this incident happened. So a lot of times we have these old cell phones kicking around the house that they're not activated, and our kids may get a hold of them and play, and we don't realize that they could be in their bedroom calling our dispatchers at the 911 desk.
Right. Unfortunately for a cell phone, the way a cell phone 911 call works, it goes to the closest tower. Not like a house phone, a landline, where it gives us an exact address. It goes to the tower, so that gets a little tricky trying to locate the phone and get a proper response time. That's the issue with the cell phones.
Yeah, it'll ping to like a triangulation. So it'll have 3 towers, and in the middle is where it's coming. So it's like a 15-mile radius.
Right.
So our message to you is make sure if you have small children, educate them about the importance of using 911 properly. And both of you've worked the front desk in addition to being out in patrol. Haven't you both worked the front desk helping handle 911?
I've worked it a couple
incoming
times. It's pretty stressful up there, you know.
Now, do you find, I read all of this crazy stuff in the news all of the time about people that call 911 for non-important reasons. I remember a couple years ago in Florida, I believe it was Volusia County, a woman called 911 because she got a bad manicure at a nail salon. So is it true? Do you really get calls that are...
I've never had a manicure one, but I have had calls, people calling on one for silly things that they shouldn't be calling 911 for. You explain to them that this is for emergency use only, and that they need to hang up and dial the sheriff station's number at 255-1121.
So do they call 911 just to ask directions sometimes on how to get somewhere? Does that happen?
It happens.
It happens a lot.
It happens a lot
Really?
where people call 911 for stuff they could find on the internet. Most people carry a smartphone, and Google has the answers for most of their questions. The thing is, with 911, a call like that ties up
It ties up
operator
for real emergencies
for a
coming
real emergency.
through.
And
There's so much abuse of 911 lines across the country. And do you know, if an adult uses 911 repeatedly for non-emergency situations, isn't there a penalty or a fine for doing that?
There is. There's a penal code section for it, for calling an emergency line and having no emergency with the intent to do that. There's always the couple times I've worked up there, there's people that call just to harass us. But
Yeah, so
it's
so
hard
really,
to locate these people.
We have a non-emergency number. If you need to call us, 661-255-1121, and let's save 911 for real emergencies. Now we're going to take a quick break, and you're listening to your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS, and when we come back, surprising facts about sexual assault. Hi, welcome back. You're listening to SCV Sheriff Talk on AM 1220 KHTS, your hometown station. We're talking about the topic of sexual assault. As some of you may know or not know, April has been designated as Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And we have 3 guests in our studio today. We have Sergeant Brian Hudson. He's on the Special Victims Bureau of the Los Angeles Sheriff Department. We have Jonathan Kraut, Domestic Violence Center, Santa Clarita, and Jessica Romo, Strength United. Sergeant Hudson, thank you very much for joining us today.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So the Special Victims Bureau, can you tell us what kind of things do you do there? Some people may not know what the Special Victims Bureau is.
Sure. The Sheriff's Department Special Victims Bureau, we're tasked with investigating cases involving the physical and sexual abuse of children and the sexual assaults of adults. We also deal with the online exploitation of children.
That's quite a broad area. I know that
Absolutely.
It used to be Special Victims Bureau just handled the crimes involving children, but now you also the adult crimes as well.
Absolutely. And back in 2012, the Sheriff's Department decided to actually make the investigation of sexual assault involving adults a specialty also. And it was one to improve the services to the victim and make sure that we can get justice for these victims. And so we've specialized it, and it's worked out rather well over the past 3.5 years.
Very good. Now, as far as the topic of sexual assault, I think that there's a lot of misconceptions out in the public what sexual assault is. Some people may think that this just involves a rape.
Yeah, and that's absolutely not true. I mean, sexual assault could be anything as unwanted touching by another person.
So it doesn't necessarily involve sexual intercourse. It can just be touching.
It can involve sodomy. It can involve oral copulation. It's just not rape, forced sexual intercourse. No.
Any unwanted sexual
contact.
Okay.
In a sense.
Now, Jessica Romo, you're here. Thank you for coming today. You're with Strength United. And what is Strength United?
So Strength United is an organization that provides free counseling to survivors of sexual assault, domestic violence, and child maltreatment. We offer free services to anyone who is a survivor of any of these things, and they can come to us by calling our hotline.
What is that hotline? We're going to give that out at the end of the show, but what is the hotline number for Strength United?
It's 661-253-0258.
Okay, 661-253, what was the last part?
0258.
0258, and that is for the Newhall office?
Yeah, so that is for the Newhall office, but really anyone can call that number and get connected to services.
And yesterday I was speaking to Larry Schallert. He's the assistant director at the College of the Canyon Student Health Center, and he was speaking very highly about Strength United. I guess you work a lot in conjunction with College of the Canyons, and so you don't handle just college students. You handle any age?
Yeah, we handle children, adults, whether you're in college or not. Really, anyone that needs help, they can come to us and seek services for these types of situations.
Now, do you have to be the victim calling, or what about if a friend confides in you that they were a victim of sexual assault and you don't know what to do? You're at a loss. Can they call you and get advice?
Yes, that's a great question. So they can definitely call our hotline and get advice, but we really would like the survivor to call themselves. We don't want someone to out someone else. Maybe they're not ready to discuss, maybe they're not ready to disclose. But yeah, if you just wanted advice, definitely call our hotline.
Okay, very good. And sitting next to me, I have Jonathan Kraut. He's with the Santa Clarita Valley Domestic Violence Center. You serve on the board, Jonathan?
Yes, and I'm very proud to be here. The board make sure that all the resources necessary and the support necessary is available to the Domestic Violence Center, which operates both the center for awareness and education, workshops and prevention, and care support and assistance. In addition, it also has a domestic violence home, a safe place for people to go if they're experiencing domestic violence.
Very good. Well, thanks again for being here. You're listening to SCV Sheriff Talk on KHTS AM 1220, and we're talking about the topic of sexual assault awareness. Now, some of the things that I wanted to discuss with you, misconceptions. We're going to talk about that. We're going to take a quick break first, and when we come back, it may not be who you think could be a victim. Coming up next. You're listening to SCV Sheriff Talk radio show. Today we're talking about sexual assault awareness. I'm Shirley Miller, the Public Information Officer at Santa Clarita Valley Sheriff Station. And in the studio today we have Sergeant Brian Hudson representing the Special Victims Bureau of Los Angeles Sheriff's Department. We have Jessica Romo from Strength United and Jonathan Kraut from the Domestic Violence Center of Santa Clarita. Now, before we went on our break, we were talking about the victims of sexual assault. It's not always who you think they are. Does anyone want to start this off?
Yeah, so, a lot of times people are afraid of the stranger. So we teach our children stranger danger, things like that. But 80% of the time, someone is sexually assaulted by someone that they know.
Right, and that really is an astounding fact because I know growing up, my mother used to always warn me about don't be out late at night and in the dark parking lots walking across the shopping centers, and really the perpetrators, it's people, as you said, 80% of the cases are people that you know. And I remember Larry Schallert yesterday, he gave me a pamphlet on acquaintance rape. And Jonathan, do you acquaintance rape, what is that?
Well, sexual assault can be anything that causes discomfort or is inappropriate to the victim. It means that the victim is not necessarily part of the situation. For example, some creepy person exposing themselves to children. It has nothing to do with the children. It has to do with the person that's committing this act, which is in a way an act that affects the mental state of the victim. So the victims aren't asking to be victimized. They may just be walking to school, or someone that you meet in the cafeteria in college. It could be anyone that you say hello to, that's an acquaintance, and their behavior and their conduct is not directly the fault or related to the victim. The victim might just happen to be a person standing there at that moment.
And so a lot of times victims may feel shame, they may feel guilt over what happens to them, and sometimes people may make very negative remarks to them. Well, you were asking for it because you were wearing that short dress, and Jessica, do you want to talk a little bit about the situations, like maybe being at a party, or where does this stuff happen at?
Yeah, so, it can happen anywhere. And that's really, victim blaming is what we want to stay away from.
Right.
It is never the survivor's fault, no matter where he or she was, or no matter what they were wearing. We want to really help support and say, it's not your fault.
Yes, and that's an important message to get out, so that people who have been victims of sexual assault, so that they feel comfortable in talking about it. Because if they don't talk about it, years later, they may be prone to suffering from anxiety, from depression. And I know Larry Schallert was saying, how beneficial counseling is in situations like this. So as far as sexual assault awareness, something that I was talking with you before the show about, yes means yes and no means no. Sometimes college students, they may be at a party and perhaps someone has had too much to drink and they're not saying yes, but they're not saying no either. So is it okay for the guy to go ahead and continue making sexual advances towards the female?
Right, no, definitely not. So we want to look for that affirmative consent. So if you...
Affirmative consent, that's
right.
The word.
So you want to hear that yes. If you hear nothing, that should be a sign to you, I'm going to stop now. Because you want to hear affirmative, you want to hear that yes.
And that is something at College of the Canyons. They have students who they serve on a peer, is it a peer counseling
Yeah, they're
group?
peer educators that
Peer
they
educators,
have, right?
And they train them about the same thing, about how yes means yes, no means no, and getting the word out to students who may find themselves in situations like this. Now, Sergeant Hudson, I wanted to touch a little bit with you as far as we're telling people if they're victims to call these different resources. Right now, we're not talking about the sheriff's department being involved, but what would you say to people as far as if they're wondering, should I report this to the sheriff's department? What happened to me?
I would say report it. The sooner it's reported after the assault, the better it is the investigation's going to be, and the better chance we're going to have of being successful getting justice for the victim. Evidence perishes over time, such as DNA, things of that nature. Witnesses, memories fade. So the sooner the law enforcement is involved in the investigation, the better it's going to be for the investigation.
Now, as far as preserving evidence if you're a victim of sexual assault, is what is it? The clothing, the undergarments that they were wearing? Just can you give me a little bit of advice to people who are a victim?
Well, the clothing they were wearing at the time, and actually the victim themselves, they are evidence. We work with a forensic services center for the Santa Clarita Valley down in Northridge, CATS. It's called, that we will have the victim forensically examined there. Any evidence that is present will be collected, but that evidence is perishable. So I believe the time period is up to 96 hours now where we can collect that evidence from the victim.
Right. So time is of the essence for these kind of things. And if sometimes people don't know if they're a victim what to expect, so basically they call a hotline and then you would advise them to, what do they do?
So if someone is trying to report, chances are they're going to call 911. And, the sheriff's office is very well trained in bringing them to CATS. And because we are so client-centered, Strength United also has an advocate who is co-located there with CATS to make sure the survivor is okay throughout the whole process.
Right, for their emotional well-being, because this is could be the most traumatic thing they've been through in their life.
Absolutely.
Okay. So now, as far as the sheriff's department, Sergeant Hudson, sometimes I hear out in the public that victims are reluctant to report to the sheriff's department because they're under the impression that these rapists, they're not going to serve much time, or the suspects. And I know that you have successfully executed a lot of cases where there was substantial time served, correct?
Oh, absolutely. In California, sexual assault crimes, the penalties are pretty harsh for the suspect. And I would encourage victims to report regardless. Any conceptions they may have, I encourage them to report it. It's all about getting them on the healing process, starting the healing process.
Right.
We refer to them as survivors because they are survivors of a horrific act. And part of that process is to make sure that the person that did this to them is held accountable.
Right. And what would you say if a friend, a lot of times victims may not be emotionally strong enough to report the incident themselves, so the first person they tell, it's not 911, it's not a hotline, it's their best friend. So if you're the best friend, what advice can you give someone?
Well, hi, Jonathan here. The Domestic Violence Center, their scope of view is actually pretty broad. There's counseling and support available to people who are friends, relatives, family members of victims. Remember that a victimization is spread out like a disease, person to person, child to parent, parent to child. In other words, the only way to stop the disease is to bring everyone that's affected into a safe environment where this can be resolved. There's counseling. There are workshops, there's group, there's meditation, there are activities. For example, on the 12th of April, there's an upstander, not a bystander.
Oh, thank you for bringing that out. That was something I didn't want to forget to let people know about.
6:30 to 8 p.m. on Tuesday, there's a workshop next week where we want mothers to bring their children and children to bring their mothers and bring your friends, where we can talk about sexual assault It's a workshop with questions and answers. But remember that the victim is not the only victim of the crime. The one that perhaps received unwanted attention or unwanted touching or some form of physical assault, that victim is affecting perhaps 50 people around them, their family members, their friends. Even if the victim doesn't say anything, their change in mood and temperament and character is apparent, and I would suggest that if you observe this in someone, you may want to call the hotline, you may want to call Strength United. You want to get some idea of how to proceed. Every case is different, so you just can't say everyone calls 911. It kind of depends on what has happened.
And I think if someone confides in you, the key is to be a good listener, to let them talk, and try not to act too shocked to them by the details that they tell you. And Jessica, you're shaking your head in agreement with me with this.
Right, yes. So a lot of times we tell others, who you're going to be that friend, you're going to be that person, and you really want to watch your facial expressions. They might tell you something that's very shocking or very saddening to you, but you're now their resource. So how are together, how are you guys going to move forward and do what's best for the survivor?
What's the worst thing you can say to your friend if they're opening up to you about something like this?
Why were you there? It's your fault.
Why were you there?
Yeah.
Why did you drink too much? Why were you wearing that?
Right. Again,
that's what you don't want to do.
We want to take away from this victim blaming mentality.
Yes, absolutely. You're listening to the SCV Sheriff Talk Show, and we're talking about sexual assault in lieu of Sexual Assault Awareness Month in April. And with us is Jessica Romo, Strength United, Jonathan Kraut, the Domestic Violence Center of Santa Clarita, and Sergeant Brian Hudson from the Special Victims Bureau. And as we're wrapping this show up, I wanted to, again, remind the public about different things happening in the month of April. Now, we were talking about, before the show started, Jessica, Denim Day. That's in April?
Yeah, so Denim Day is April 27th, and anyone can participate no matter where they are, which is great. And
we get to wear jeans to work.
Yes. So it's to wear jeans.
Yes.
Wear jeans wherever you are.
And it's really, for an important cause.
Yes, it's to raise awareness about sexual assault. And it really came from a survivor being discredited because she was wearing jeans, because they said her jeans were too tight. So we are really trying to be upstanders and really trying to take a stand by everyone wearing jeans.
I don't have my count. What day of the week does April 27th fall on? Do you know offhand?
Wednesday.
It's a Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Okay, I was going to be really disappointed if it was a Saturday and I didn't get to wear jeans to work. So April 27th, Denim Day, wear jeans to show the awareness for Sexual Assault Month. And then as Jonathan Kraut had mentioned, there is a workshop next week. It's on April 12th, starts at 6:30?
Right, that's a Tuesday at the Savia Center, which is on New Hall Avenue. And everyone is welcome, it's free. If you have any questions or concerns, or you think you or someone you know has been a victim of sexual assault or any kind of abuse, abusive behavior can be psychological, it can be emotional, it can be economic, where someone takes away your money. It can be, and so you want to address all of it and say, the first question is this okay or not? Would I do this to my best friend? If it's not okay, the second question is, are you going to do something about it or just let it go? If you let it go, odds are nothing will change. And the third is, well, if it's not okay, how do you change the circumstance? Now, when a victim takes a change in personality or approach, it affects everything around them. For the better. So don't sit back and say it never happens to me. 1 in 5 adults are victimized in some form of sexual assault over their lifetime. So almost 20% of all the people you see in the store, that's 1 in 5. Your family members, everyone
pretty
high
at
statistics.
school, everyone at work, even in the sheriff's department, there's a high propensity for abuse that may not be on the outset considered abuse, but everybody, I've had judges who have come in who sat on the bench in family court who said, oh my God, I think I was a victim of abuse. It can affect everybody.
Well, I wanted to thank all of you for joining us. You're listening to AM 1220 KHTS, your hometown station. Thank you, Sergeant Hudson, Jessica Romo, and Jonathan Kraut for joining us. And if you want to stay connected with Santa Clarita Sheriff's Station, there's a bunch of ways you can do that. One is signing up for Nixle. That's www.nixle.com. It allows you to receive customized crime reports based on your neighborhood and where you live. We're also on Twitter, SCV Sheriff, and like us on Facebook. So thanks for joining us, and we will see you in 2 weeks.